time to play ball. Welcome to the podcast with no limits. Whether it be sports, current events, or random thoughts, this is the place to step in and stay a while. Your host is a proud alumnus of Rio Hondo Prep, a former minor league baseball umpire, and a man with strong opinions. Welcome to the Get Home Safe podcast and your host, Matt Hersema.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Get Home Safe. It is a Friday edition of the pod, so that means we have a very special guest, and we will be joined by a guest today. You immediately recognize his voice. He's actually the voice of the Get Home Safe podcast intro. There with the intro music, you hear him every single episode before I come on the air. My ugly mug here on YouTube. I'm going to be joined by none other than Chris Albaugh. Also known Dr. Albaugh, the great optometrist out here in Southern California. He is a big-time public address announcer. He is the voice of the Cal State Fullerton Titans on the baseball field, as well as the Rancho Cucamonga Quakes in the California League of minor league baseball. He's worked for the Oakland Raiders. He's worked for the Dodgers. He's worked for the Lake Elsinore Storm. He has a great resume. He's a huge sports fan, and I'm so happy that he's coming back on the podcast because he was one of my earliest guests when I got this thing going, got the ball rolling, if you will. So he was among the early innings of the podcast, and I didn't know what I was doing too much back then. I've learned a few things, but we've come a long way. It's been, man, over 2 years since Chris has come on the pod. I've tried to talk with him many times. We've tried to arrange it. He's very busy, especially during baseball season. He's usually at a ballpark somewhere, and he is the eye in the sky, you know, that great view from the press box, and he does all the announcing. And man, if you've gone to a local ball game and you've heard Chris's voice, you know, it's special. It takes you back to some fun memories and moments from Titan baseball and, of course, minor league baseball. And Chris has a ton of stories. Our initial podcast back 2 years ago was great, but I think we're going to take a deeper dive today, maybe talk about college baseball, how things have changed, maybe how some things have changed in the public address world, the broadcasting world. I'm curious of some of his thoughts on just some of the changes we're seeing in sports, some of his favorite broadcasters, just back a little bit more about Chris's story and a great friendship he and I have. I can't wait to have him on the podcast. So it's going to be a fun one today. A lot of baseball, but a ton of other sports to talk about as well. It is once again my privilege to have back on the podcast, the voice of the Get Home Safe podcast, Mr. Chris Albaugh. All right, as I said in the introduction, you will recognize this man's voice immediately because you hear it at the beginning of every single Get Home Safe podcast. We are joined by my good friend, Dr. Chris Albaugh. Chris, what's up, man? It's been like 2 years since we had you on the podcast.
I know. I can't believe it. What's going on, Matt Hersema?
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. No one says it like you, man. Most people butcher it. You always gave me a little extra juice when I was umpiring, and you'd say my last name before the game started back in the Cal League days. I
cannot believe it's been 2 years, and we had a great discussion last time. And boy, it's just unbelievable how COVID has just made everything fly.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Indeed. We, there's a lot to talk about because you have a great perspective in a lot of sports, but, mostly baseball, and to talk about kind of the different type of season, you saw in 2021, because there really was no minor league baseball season in 2020, right?
Exactly. We had very little of it in 2020. And then like a week or so, they canceled it. Then 2021, they had a season, and it was kind of an abridged season. It was like 2/3 of the normal games. And then unfortunately, some of the things that they did at the time, where they had homestands that were just a week long with the same team. These are the things where COVID has led to some changes that might be permanent. Baseball had been wanting to consolidate the minor leagues. That all went on since you and I last discussed, and a lot of teams that had good attendance lost their affiliations. The Cal League is now low A. Teams like Fresno that were triple A for 20 years are now in the low A Cal League. And, Major League Baseball has really changed minor league baseball permanently. And one of the things that happened with COVID was that was their opportunity to kind of force their way on some of these changes. And unfortunately, I think it's going to have a detrimental effect in the long run. You and I love baseball, but minor league baseball is a great passion, and so is college baseball. And you feel a lot more connected with it than you do Major League Baseball. And they're really cutting into that. They've had these programs like Lancaster had great attendance for years, and they lost their affiliation. They're not affiliated with anybody. You've got a Cal League that was at least high A for 60 years, is now low A, and we can talk about the level of play. But they've changed. We'll get to this. You and I wanted to talk about kind of the things they're doing with the clock. They want to use minor league baseball as a way of experimenting with these changes, larger bases. We're not dealing with that. Other teams are. The extra inning rule where you start somebody at second. Unfortunately, Major League Baseball seems intent on taking minor league baseball and using it as a camp, a tryout camp and an experimental camp instead of its own entity. And how minor league baseball survived for 100 years is being something a little different. And unfortunately, Major League Baseball doesn't recognize that. And I worry about the future of minor league baseball being a unique fan experience if things keep going the way they are.
Yeah, there's a lot of great points there that we'll unpack. And yeah, I think anyone who's been affiliated with minor league baseball in some regard, umpiring or working up in the press box or the game staff or the players themselves, Major League Baseball has always kind of looked at minor league baseball like this necessary evil, almost like this piece of gum on your shoe that well, I'm not going to scrape it off yet. And so the past couple of years with the changes, you'll take us in a little deeper there, but I should mention, I kind of did before, but Chris, a lot of people, they know your resume. They know you worked for the Lake Elsinore Storm in minor league baseball. You're currently the Rancho Cucamonga Quakes PA guy, and you've been with Cal State Fullerton Baseball an awful long time. So you have seen a lot of pitches, my friend, been around a lot of baseball. And man, you're a guy that I go to as someone who you have an unbiased opinion. I think, some people, even though you're connected to these teams, I think you're someone that sits back, the eye in the sky, and you can give impartial judgments onto what's going on, not only on the field, but around everything as well.
Yeah. I mean, you do this long enough. I mean, I remember the great quote by Vince Scully in Ken Burns' baseball documentary, where he talked about you get older, your feelings change, you don't get quite as emotional, you still enjoy it, but your perspective changes somewhat. And that's why I was talking to you earlier last week about how you kind of take a step back and you're seeing these changes in Major League Baseball and minor league baseball, and you see it from a perspective of having been there and done that, and what works and what doesn't, what makes it unique. You and I have done the things we've done, me as a PA announcer working in a press box, you as an umpire, because we have a passion, not just for sports, but these level of sports where you feel connected. And so I hate to see that change. And you and I kind of have a perspective being on the front lines that other people might not have. And, I'm still a Cal State Fullerton rooter, number one. And, you always cheer for the teams you work for. But at the same time, you also can have a perspective you might not have had when you were younger, when you were just all in. So.
Well, yeah, there's moments I've seen it firsthand when, a visiting team wins at a regional at Cal State Fullerton, for example, and that's a terrible feeling for the Titan fans, but you do a good job of pushing aside your loyalties and, making a nice announcement for I hate saying these words, but congratulations, Stanford, on winning, the regional or whatever. So there's still a job to be done, is my point. And you've always done a great job of that. You're pulling for again, as you mentioned, your teams, but still the job is supposed to be somewhat impartial. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have some fun as well. And that's where you've really excelled in the minor league side of things too. You kind of do whatever you want up there, right?
And that's another thing that's changed over the years. When I first started doing this, I would push the envelope a lot. When I first started doing the Raiders, for instance, it was just straightforward and dry, and the NFL really didn't want you doing too much to get the fan base going, which I kind of laughable when you think about it now. But when I introduced the players, I added a little flavor. When I said, first down or interception, I would put a little twist on it. And by the time my 8 years were done, I'd really completely changed things. Now you listen to the announcers and they're almost like basketball announcers. When I used to do the Clippers I was their backup for a long time. I was the young, energetic guy that was kind of doing the wild and woolly thing. And there were some other guys the Chicago Bulls guy was already famous, but I was always pushing the envelope, but there was always a line I didn't want to cross. Now I still feel like I'm trying to be energetic and interesting and creative, but man, things have really gotten crazy, especially basketball. And at some point you just got to remember at the same time you're trying to be professional. So you're trying to get the fans engaged and have fun with it, but you don't want it to seem kind of amateurish. But things sure have changed. I mean, boy, I tell you, in football, you can pretty much do anything anymore. In fact, you never used to be able to put video clips up when the guys were sitting in the booth for the Raiders that you couldn't say "make noise, fans." Believe it or not,
Really?
when I left football, the NFL in 2005, that was still a rule. So things are really changing, which is ironic, as we're going to talk about what Major League Baseball is doing. They almost seem to be trying to do the reverse. They want to get fans loud and rowdy, but they keep making changes to the game that don't seem to go hand in hand with the ultimate fan experience. But that's why I encourage people, get out there to these minor league teams and college teams. It's a different experience. You're a lot more engaged. It's a lot more fun.
Oh yeah, you can relate more. No one on the field's making $30 million, a year, and guys are trying hard. And not to say major leaguers don't, but it is a little different. And I got to ask you, because this thought just popped into my head. I've turned into a really big fight fan over the past few years, boxing and UFC. I would say right now, probably the most famous, I guess, or popular, I don't know how to phrase it, PA guy is Bruce Buffer with the UFC. A ton of energy. Everyone knows him. And I mean, what do you make of his theatrics?
Well, he and his brother Michael have been around for 30 years, and they've kind of, Bruce has grown along with UFC. They were kind of finding their way in that. And you have to give credit to Vince McMahon. A lot of what they do is kind of taking a lot of what WWF, WWE now used to do, and in a hokey way, but obviously it's a real thing. So they're incorporating that energy into a real sport. I think that's why people like you love it so much, because it's the real deal. There's, professional boxing, you kind of wondered if the money got too big and these guys are really into it, but it really seems authentic when you watch it as a fan. And it's, as the peak of it, I don't know if it's reached this peak, but man, it seemed to just take over within a 5-year period about 10 years ago or maybe more. And now the bars that they get is more people for UFC than they do football. And their pay-per-view events are successful. So there's a lot of energy out there. And when guys like Bruce Buffer are trying to be creative, I have a lot of respect for them, because I told you once, one of my PA heroes was a guy named Dave Zinkov that did the 76ers in the 60s and 70s. He was way ahead of his time. And he would introduce Julius Erving by saying, the doctor's in the house, Julius Erving, and all this unique way of doing it. And nobody else was doing that a long time ago. And those are kind of my heroes, the guys that would do it. Now, I think there are some guys that go way over the top. Like, I don't know if you're watching Houston Rockets basketball, it's almost insane what they're doing. But there are guys like Buffer, then more power to him. I mean, Michael Buffer gets, I think, $100,000 in appearance just to say, "Are you ready to rumble?" and walk off the field. So
I know.
You got to hand it to him. He's created a business around that, and who would have thought somebody could do that with just being an announcer?
Yeah, just saying a few words, and then it's just crazy. Like when you think about that, and there is the element of energy, because we all saw, Chris, games over the past few years. We saw stadiums in arenas with no fans. And I don't know if there were PA guys or not. What can you tell me? Did you do games still during when there were empty stadiums and announcing? And were you kind of like, this is kind of weird, I'm not talking to anybody?
Cal State Fullerton had a few games like that. They had only essential personnel in attendance. It was about most of the season last year, or half of it anyway, before they started allowing fans in. And without fans, it was just, and of course they weren't piping in sounds. Well, it was really awkward. And I would just be reading flatly. And I'm like, well, you could have anybody do this. I mean, I was there because it was Titans and I wanted to be there. But at the same time, it took all the fun out of it for me, because You're there as an official, you're a game official, but at the same time, if you're not trying to get the fans in, well, why am I here? So that was
Yeah.
really awkward, and it really made you appreciate, having live sports back. And, it's just crazy when you think about it. Canada is still limiting the number of fans going into stadiums at this late in the game. It's almost insane, but thank God we really pushed the envelope here in America and got the vaccinations out, and got the rules established so we can get back into it's an important part of everybody's lives, and it's the interaction, not just nobody wants to watch teams play without sound on. You remember when they had in the early 80s, NBC tried an experiment. They had NFL games without announcers, and it was even with just the sound of the fans, it was a failure. It's all part of that experience, the announcers, the crowd, the camera showing us what's going on. And boy, we really missed it that year and a half that they were really restricting it.
It was so odd watching games with just silence in the arena, and you're just like, what in the world? This is an NFL game. There's nobody there. It's just, those days are behind us. I hope never again.
Let me ask you, you're a Laker fan. When the Lakers won the championship in the bubble, that had to be almost feeling like they won the summer league rather than the title. Now people are like, gosh, we might not win another for a while, but that had to take some of the fun out of it as a fan, as a Laker fan. It had
the AAU tournament. And then I'm watching this HBO stuff with the Lakers, the 80s, and I'm just like, it's just not the same, man. It's not the same at all. It's, I guess it counts, but it's like anyway, that was just so odd. Now, I was incredibly grateful. I would rather take that over the no sports we saw for many, many months. And then it was, I think UFC that came back first with no fans, and then it just got going from there. But
Dana was not going to be denied.
No, Dana, we talked UFC already, but Dana's the best leader in sports, in my opinion. That guy gets it done, and he loves the fans, and he loves his fighters as well. So, Chris, I tell people all the time, I don't umpire anymore. I'm probably not going to go back. But the most fun I ever had, honestly, was working in a press box, especially during baseball. You and I have had some great times, and you really can't explain it to people who don't get to experience it. But whether a guy's running the scoreboard or the music, you're doing PA, guys are doing stats. We're all kind of a bunch of buddies just watching a game on our couch, but we also have some responsibilities as well, right?
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun, and everybody has the same thought process in mind. At least for the Quakes, not so much for the Titans anymore, unfortunately, but everybody wants to put on a great show. The guy that does the music next to us for years, who now is on to the Milwaukee Brewers, he does scoreboard and various duties with them. It's a passion, it sounds a little silly. Wow, you're just playing music for minor league baseball. What's the big deal? But if you can get the crowd into it and get a flow for the game, that's important. And just ask, WWF and those kind of guys are WWE now, and even USC. It's all part of getting the crowd going, and that influences the game. You're making jokes in the booth, having a good time with each other, but you're working a job, and you want the product to be rewarding. And I love the Cal League, and so did you, because you've got that more direct interaction with the fans. And in the press box, it's a lot of fun. Titans is a different story. I love the Titans. You're really into the hardcore baseball end, not so much a marketing product, where you're trying to get the fans too into it, but it's a different experience, but it's still fun to be part of it. You feel like you're part of something, and not just on the outside looking in. So that's what I love about it. And I know that's why you loved about umpiring too. You're part of it. You're involved in it. You're not
exactly. It takes there's many different pieces on the chessboard, that it all just kind of bring it all together. And just it's weird. It's this addiction, especially with baseball. You want to be a part of the game in some way, shape, or form. And it's not easy doing 140 games or 70 home games for you, but then another 30, games with Cal State Fullerton. By the month of September, your voice has got to be just worn out.
Well, in April and May, when they overlap, I basically don't have a weekend or even a lot of weeks off for month or two at a time, but that's okay. Like tomorrow, for instance, I have a day game for the Quakes. They have what's called education days twice a year, where kids come in. It's a 11 o'clock game, and then I got the Titans at 6, and I look forward to it. I take the day off work, and I still love it. You have no business being there if you don't, because you're not going to be entertaining to the fans, but it's a responsible job. There are a lot of people give their right arm to do it, but it is a passion, that's for sure. And that's why I hate to see Major League Baseball trying to make changes to minor league baseball that tries to influence that. They're looking at from their perspective, and they shouldn't. They should look at it from the perspective of a minor league guy and look at it at that ground level. They're
Well,
looking
yeah.
for a jet flying over saying, oh, this is what we want, and that's not what minor league baseball is.
No, I mean, just look at the cities, for instance, they're completely different markets and everything. The only thing Major League Baseball should care about is if their prospect got his 4 at bats that night. And if he didn't get hurt, he threw 70 pitches or whatever. Like, you shouldn't worry about everything else that's going on, because most of the players are going to be in and out of the system. It's the fans that are going to be in this stadium, in these cities, in these leagues for a lifetime.
Yeah. COVID's caused a lot of changes. One of the casualties was host families that used to host players.
Oh,
I knew a guy that hosted 1 year. He had Mike Trout, and doggone it, I forgot the pitcher they had. The one when Trout came up that was really good too. That's now gone. He had them both at the same time, and these families, you get a lifetime connection with these players, and it helps them out. Now that's gone. Now they get the players hotels and all that, so there's less interaction. And the players feel less interaction with the team too, and the fans if they're not interacting in any way. And that's what I worry about. They're not helping us out when it comes to the giveaways and other things like they used to. They still do somewhat, but they're getting more and more distance, which is what we liked about minor league baseball as opposed to Major League Baseball. The players weren't so distant yet. So they're turning these players into people that we don't get to know as well, and that's really disappointing, because that's what sets college ball and minor league ball apart. So COVID's created a lot of casualties, and that's one of them.
Yeah, no kidding. It's been a wild few years, some adjustments, and also some just I guess this is the new world order, and I don't know. I'm kind of like, don't mess with my sports. I like patterns. I don't deal with change as well. And I mean, we're seeing some of this. This is something I just really don't like, especially as a former umpire who would have to enforce this stuff. But the whole concept of a pitch clock and a game clock for baseball, I just, they're trying so hard. I don't think it works. What are your thoughts on pitch clocks in minor league baseball and college baseball?
Well, once Major League Baseball realigned minor league baseball, they started instituting these changes at each different level to see how they worked. And the pitch clock and the runner at second base and extra innings were the 2 rule changes they experimented with in the Cal League, the league that the Quakes are in. And the clock it's almost a little silly. You watch it, and I joked with you before we went on air about how it's like that when we were kids. At some point in high school, everybody played a goofy game of golf where you ran up, hit the ball, and ran, and see how quickly you could play the game. And it was sort of silly. It was all about how quickly you could play and not the game. And these batters are standing in the box before the guy hits a home run. He's coming around. The guy's standing in the box, ready to go. He has to get out of the box for the player to come across. So we can't get the sound effects across. I can't say the promo I'm supposed to do. The guy grounds out. Next guy comes up. Sometimes you almost miss a play because it's when your home team strikes out. Next guy's in the box in 5 seconds. The players are getting used to it. The new young players, and the games are finishing quick, but it's influencing the flavor of the game. It's just going so fast, and the obsession is clock first. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. What about, is this batter going to get the most out of his at bat? And the other thing that goes on too is at the minor league level, you don't have as much in between innings time for the mascots to interact with the crowd, and the kids love the mascots, and that's going away. They're barely able to do anything, and so it's changing the fan experience. So to me, a rule change when it's so obvious that it dominates your attention is a problem. And that's the problem with the clock, is you're thinking about moving along instead of the game itself and the competition between the 2 teams and the players.
Yeah, I just, we all want faster games, but when it becomes an obstacle and a distraction, as you mentioned, I just think it's paving the way for probably more problems. I didn't realize, I was just looking at the Cal League, as you mentioned, Fresno. I didn't realize they were in the Cal League now. And let's see, Lancaster, are they no more?
Lancaster lost their affiliation, even though they were one of the most successfully attended teams. It had to do with convenience to the major league teams. And so Fresno, which had been a AAA team for 40 years, became a low A team. The Cal League, which was high A for 40 years is now low A. And then the first thing that happened was the Dodgers reassured the Quakes, hey, don't worry, our best players will start at low A first. Well, guess what? No, they don't.
No.
The best players like Walker Buehler and Cody Bellinger and others, they went right to the Rancho Cucamonga first. They didn't go to Great Lakes, Michigan, which was low A, and then they'd move them up from there. And the Dodgers' 2 top draft picks last year never went to Rancho. So now the fans are really getting a totally different experience because they're not always going to see the future Dodger players, which is what you're marketing.
Well, that was the biggest part of the Cal League, was having those affiliates so close to the Dodgers, the Angels, the Padres, the Giants, so that they could come and rehab more. Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Not only that, but you got to see the best players. I mean, all the Dodgers that were homegrown, the Bellingers, even these gone now, Jock Peterson, the Julio Uriases, all of them went through Rancho. Well, a lot of them didn't go to the low A Great Lakes. Well, now we're low A, so they're skipping some of them over. And so the fans don't get that. And, hey, the Houston Astros that won the World Series, all those guys came up through Lancaster. They were the Astros affiliate at the time, and we saw all of them. And not to mention the Angels and the future Padre stars all came up through the Cal League, and now we're not seeing all of them. So that changes things. The addition, having the runner at second base, that's kind of a different story. Some people like that, some people don't. There's reasons to do that in the minor leagues. So you don't burn out arms and have 15-inning games. But and the games were getting really long prior to the game clock, but there are ways of adjusting the time of game, keeping the batter in the box like an umpire can do without necessarily having, charging a ball to a pitcher because he didn't throw it 20 seconds. He wanted to take an extra second. All you're thinking about is game clock, almost like a shot clock in basketball. And I don't like that, So time of game is nice, but if that's all you're talking about and thinking about, and you notice it's affecting your appreciation of the game, that's a problem. So Major League Baseball loves it. They pointed out that what the Cal League has been doing with these 2-hour and 18-minute games, wow, this is fantastic. But they don't stop and ask, but are the games good?
Yeah.
Fans like them.
No, that's a really good point. And I can just picture it all because I worked in Great Lakes. I worked in the Midwest League. I worked in the Cal League, and just to see everything kind of flip-flopped is really, really weird. And so let me get this. So there's still 8 teams in the Cal League. Yeah. So is there no north-south now? Because Visalia and Fresno, they're not in the South. Are they out? Is there 2 divisions or no?
Yeah, there's still 2 divisions. And so down the South, it's Elsinore, us, Inland Empire, and I forget who the 4th one is. And then, you've got San Jose, and you still have Modesto, which is the A's. And you
Stockton?
Still have, now you've got, like I said, Fresno, and I can't think of the 4th is, but it's pretty small. And the other frustrating thing, the other COVID effect was this. Major League Baseball said to limit travel during COVID, you're going to have 7-game homestands against the same team.
Bad
and
idea.
They kept it this year because they decided they liked it to reduce travel expense. So now every homestand the Quakes have is 7-game with the Inland Empire 66ers, the Angels affiliate. Then 7 games with the Lake Elsinore Storm, the Padre affiliate. You're seeing starting pitchers twice in a homestand for the other team and your team. And it's so different than what we're used to. And it really, you're seeing the attendance really drop early in the week and people just coming in the weekends because they're seeing the same teams over and over and over. And, Inland Empire, their fans come and see us. But if you're like Elsinore, are you going to drive up to see us during the week, or are you going to wait till the weekend? Well, you're going to wait till the weekend. So it's affecting attendance somewhat too. So you're seeing changes that are really changing the way the league works. And I really worry about where minor league baseball is going. If you mess with it too much, it's not going to be a unique product. People will think of it like a summer basketball league. And the NBA Summer Pro League does not draw well in some areas. And so you're taking the unique fun of minor league baseball and you're changing it into a cheap major league experience. And how successful is that going to be for a fan? Not really.
And I gotta say, as a former umpire, 7 games in a row with the same 2 teams is not a good idea.
It's getting ugly too with the umpires. You can see because personalities get chafed. They don't get a break from each other.
No, absolutely. There's only 4 crews when there's 8 teams, means there's only 8 umpires, and to have the same 2 guys for a week. I mean, that already happened already in the scheduling conflict sometimes, but when it's the same two teams, I mean, that if to put it in perspective, two umpires, so 7-game series. Yeah. Some poor guy's got 4 plate jobs, with the same two teams. It's not, and the other guy has 3. So,
and as you know, you make a call a team doesn't like. If you only have a 3 or 4 game homestand, it's off everybody's memory in 4 days. But if you're there the whole week, and that happened on Monday, they're still chafing about it with you on Saturday.
yeah.
And you're seeing a lot more barking between the umpires and coaches than we used to. And I think that's a big part of it.
Oh yeah. I mean, you just connect the dots and you can see where it all leads. Chris, now how does one, because I'm sure there's probably someone out there listening who'd be like, I would like to do that. Or maybe they're doing PA work for their local high school or little league or something. How did you get your start, and where did this interest come from? Did you want to be a broadcaster on the radio, or how did you end up behind the microphone announcing, who's coming up to bat?
Well, when I was in high school, like a lot of people, I thought I'd like to be a broadcaster. And I was in a high school in Michigan for a couple of years. We actually had a radio station. I did play-by-play for a while. But then when I got to college, I got a little nervous talking to people who were in their 40s and 50s still waiting on their break. And I wasn't comfortable with that financially. My family never had a lot of money, and I wanted a little more security than that. And so I kind of turned away from that. But then when I was working in an ophthalmology practice, I'm an optometrist, as I do for a living, and I was working with an ophthalmologist, and the Lake Elsinore Storm came to town, new team, and they had open auditions for their PA announcer. And I auditioned, and somebody else got it initially, but that didn't work out. And within a week or two, I got the job. And ever since then, I just kept plugging away and sending out tapes. Back in the day, those were tapes. We didn't have computers yet. Sorry, I'm that old.
Yeah, you're gonna have to explain what a tape is.
Yeah, so audition tapes, and then eventually I got lucky. One day the Clippers were desperate for an announcer. Their guy was sick. Ironically, I was home with 103 flu. Didn't tell them. I still went to the game, and then boom, there you've got an audition tape with you doing a Clipper game. And then you send that into the Angels, and some guy from the Angels says, "Oh, we need a backup. Come on an audition." And then I got to start to doing Angel games as a backup. And then the guy that did the Clippers, I was his backup. His name is Dennis Packer, and he got me to be the Raiders backup, and I did a game. And then when he left the Raiders, I was able to get the Raider job. And so for anybody who wants to do that, I say the key is go do whatever job it is. I did a lot of crazy things. I did pro beach hockey at the beach in ESPN. I did ladies league baseball. I've done high school, and you just go do anything. And even if it's little league, you get good at it, you get comfortable with it, and then you just keep making tapes. Unfortunately, that's another thing that's changed. It used to be people who had achieved a certain level would always be invited when a team needed a PA announcer. And that's kind of become a gimmick thing now. The Padres had an open audition for a guy for a hire, and they had 3,000 auditions. And of course, they cross-market it with one of these online job places. And who knows how they really make the decision. And I talked to somebody the other day and said some other team had 6,000 auditions, a major league team. So unfortunately, it's become a kind of a gimmick now. And I enjoy doing the lower levels anyway. I had the privilege of doing the Raiders for 8 years. I was the Clippers backup for about 8 years. I was their main guy for about a year. I was the Angels backup for 4 or 5 years, and I've done the Dodgers. I was their backup for about 4 years. But these teams, they turn over all the time. They turn over front office people. And the guy who hired you, who liked you, he's gone. He brings in his friend, and you're gone. So the nice thing about doing the level of the Quakes and Cal State Fullerton is it's nice to be part of something for 10, 15 years and not be always looking over your shoulder all the time. So if for anybody who's out there and you're thinking, hey, I'd like to do something, like go out there and do your little league, go do your high school. There are college volleyball teams that need somebody, and eventually you just get to know the right people and you get opportunities.
Yeah, it's I think opportunities, but it's reps, getting at bats, right? Hey, every time you get in the box, that's a repetition, and no matter what level you're doing something, hey, that's an opportunity to get better yourself, and maybe someone will take notice. Man, that is awesome stuff. So how does that work? Did when with the the Raiders, you were the backup, I know eventually the full-time guy, but the Clippers and the Dodgers, did they when would they call you to be like, hey, our guy is out today? Or would it be a last minute thing that you had to race somewhere?
Well, sometimes it was last minute. The Clippers, the very first time they called me out of the blue, and then after that they would just let me know. But the gentleman I was backing up he was doing the Raiders and the Clippers, so he knew there'd be some conflicts, and so you had some anticipation for some events. Michael Carlucci was the Dodger announcer for a long time. And he was great, and he lost his job because they turned over the front office. And even though he did a good job, he was gone. So it happens to the best of them.
Yeah.
He did video games back when they were first coming out. EA Sports and the others hired him to do narration on video games. So sometimes he'd miss for that reason. So you get in there, and and every once in a while they might get sick. So it's kind of last minute sometimes, but usually it was kind of ahead of time. Because the PA announcer themselves, they don't like to leave the door open too much for somebody else. So they don't tend to miss unless they have to. So, but, and sometimes you get lucky. One time I did a Dodger game on a Wednesday, and then there was a day off, and then he missed the first game of the next series, which was on a Friday. So I got to do 2 games in 3 days, and both of them went 14 innings. So Nancy B. Heffley, the organist, joked that I was a jinx, and I said, no, I'm just trying to get my money's worth.
That's right. More free baseball. Let's go. That is fantastic. What was the first moment for you when you worked a big, maybe it was that Clipper game or maybe the Raiders? Was there ever a moment, or was there a couple of moments even when you're kind of like, you're just talking in the microphone, but you paused and kind of looked around like, oh my goodness, I'm at Raiders, the Oakland Coliseum. Oh my goodness, I'm at the sports arena. This is Dodger Stadium. Like, does it hit you right away, or do you kind of block it out and say, okay, I got to go to work now?
The one time I felt that way, the first time was doing the Dodgers. I'd done the Angels a couple times, and that was a thrill, obviously. And I'd done the Clippers already, and that was a thrill, obviously. But doing Dodger Stadium, even not as a Dodger fan, that's a whole different ball of wax. That'd be like you're doing Yankee Stadium or you're announcing at Lambeau Field. The field itself, has that prestige to it. So doing a Dodger game, I remember every minute. I was so thrilled. And, it didn't hurt the experience that I walked into the press box the way it used to be. Right behind where I was a little meal room for staff. And I went in to eat, and there was Vin Scully and Ross Porter. And like, hey, son, have a seat. And you're sitting there having a hot dog with Vin Scully. So that certainly contributed to the experience. But you're doing Dodger Stadium, and even though you're not doing what I did with the Raiders, you're not trying to pump people up. You're just doing that traditional Dodger, Mike Piazza. But the fans react, and I remember doing Raul Mondesi. You couldn't even get the word Mondesi out of your mouth. You go Raul, and people would say that so loud with you, you couldn't even hear yourself. And it was just, these are the Dodgers, and I got to do it at a time when it was Piazza and Brett Butler and Eric Karros. And all those guys, and the 5 rookies of the year were all on the team at the time, and it was Tommy Lasorda. That was the biggest thrill for me. Doing the Raiders was great, and AFC Championship games, and I really left my mark there. They had interviews with the players that talked about how I would say Tyrone Wheatley would get them pumped up, and I really thought I left a mark there, and I'm proud of what I did there. But the hair on the neck experience was definitely Dodger Stadium.
Wow. Yeah, I got a little goosebumps myself. I mean, that's what I grew up on, those early 90s, as a little kid looking up to those guys. And I remember going to Dodger Stadium the first time, and I can't imagine being in that Vin Scully press box. It just had to be a real thrill. I remember I got to work a game at Angel Stadium for a college baseball game sometime, and I'm behind the plate, and I'm wiping off home plate. And I just remember that feeling. Every time I'd see an Angel Stadium game on TV, I'd see the big league umpire wiping the plate off. I was like, hey, I did that before, right there, where so many great moments have happened. So you've had just countless memories. What are some other memories from your public address days and just any level, really?
Well, as far as, the moments, great. There've been some great moments. We talked about this before, where Brett Favre in his Monday Night Football game,
oh yeah,
Raiders, when his father had died that week and he still played, and he had one of the most amazing games of his life. You could feel the moment at the time. There were moments like that. You knew that was a game that you were going to say, I was there. And to be the guy saying, Brett Favre to whoever touchdown, and you hear yourself on a tape 20 years later, it's pretty exciting. But some of the ones that you remember are the ones that are a little bit different. Like one time I was doing an Angel game and the sound went out for 4 innings. So in the 8th inning, they wanted me to do an 8th inning stretch and catch up on a bunch of announcements. And so sometimes it's things like that you remember as much as anything else. And of course, doing the AFC Championship game the first time where the Raiders lost to the Ravens, the Ravens were 3rd and long on their 1-yard line early in the game, and you thought the Raiders were going to put a stamp on this game, and they had a 99-yard touchdown pass to Shannon Sharp, and you just remember that moment and your heart sinks. and then there's the other great moments when they won the AFC Championship, and I said the Raiders Nation is going to the Super Bowl, and then Jim Nantz says the same thing 5 seconds later, copying what I said. And, you got moments like that, but there are some funny moments too. You and I talked earlier about some of the worst moments with Cal State Fullerton coming back against Washington a few years ago in a super regional. I got a home run to take the lead in the 9th. I thought this might be the greatest Titan win ever. And they lose, they let them tie it in the 9th and lose it in the 10th. And it went from the best ever to the worst ever. So some of the moments you remember aren't always pleasurable.
I think
you were there and you were part of it, and that the thrill of it.
No, I think it's easier to remember the painful memories. Unfortunately, some of the worst losses, in Titan baseball, losing to those Stanford guys and, Arizona State and UCLA, all those rivalry games. And just like, as a sports fan, I've had my heart ripped out more times than I'm happy, but I keep coming back. Who are some of your teams that you followed over the years growing up and even now, baseball or otherwise?
Well, it changed a bit. I lived around the country when I was a kid. When I was really young, I lived in Philadelphia and was a Phillies fan in their glory days, in the late 70s, mid 70s. But then I kind of got into Reggie Jackson because my brother did when he was with the A's. And then when he went to the Yankees, I kind of became a Yankee fan. But we kept moving around, ended up in LA in the late 70s and kind of followed the Angels too. And but when I was a kid, the teams that broke my heart were the Philadelphia 76ers, lost the NBA title like 2 or 3 times before they won it. And then the Phillies kept losing then to the Dodgers and the NLCS all the time until they finally won it. But I was a Vikings fan, and that was, you're never a fan like you are when you're, 9, 10, 11 years old. And when the Vikings lost all those Super Bowls, it crushed me. But I look back, my cousin was a Rams fan, even though he lived on a farm in Illinois, and the Vikings kept beating the Rams in the 70s in the NFC title game. So he still gripes about that. So, when you're a fan at that age, there's nothing like it because the highs and lows are so high and so low. And that's what's great as an adult to be part of these games, because I find it hard to get too emotionally involved in pro sports anymore, especially if I'm not working for a team. You do get a different perspective, but when you're a part of it and you're there and you get to be on the mic or you get to be on the field like you were, it's still that thrill is still there, and that's why we do it.
Yeah,
it keeps your juices flowing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's only so many Netflix shows and documentaries you can watch, right? I've always said sports is the ultimate. It's the ultimate show because it's unscripted. You don't know what's going to happen. It's competition. It could go any direction, and I think that's why guys like me love sports so much. Is there's no script. There's no director saying, "Hey, here's how it's supposed to go." Sometimes you see stuff that is just truly unbelievable.
And it's being there. I mean, I still love to go to games. You may have seen Kirk Gibson's home run on TV like everybody did, but if you happen to be one of the lucky people who were there, I was there when the Angels beat the Twins. I was there that whole playoff series. They beat the Yankees and then the Twins in 2002. There's nothing like being there. And then, unfortunately, I couldn't get tickets for the World Series. All the rich people stepped up and bought them. And watching on TV, it's just not the same thing. And when you get to be in the booth and participating or on the field as you were, it's even more exciting. Even if you're not, some of the teams, I'm kind of the show. The Quakes, people know me. They know my style. That's part of the event. Same thing with the Raiders. I got to be kind of a known entity. But some of the teams, nobody knows who I am, but that's okay. That part of the fun isn't my getting attention. It's just being a part of it. And sometimes you get to influence the fan experience, but with the Dodgers, it was just being there and being the guy that was doing the usual Dodger voice. Nobody knew who I was, but boy, was that exciting. Not everybody gets to be Lawrence Tanner like of the Lakers, or he actually becomes an icon like Bob Shepard of the Yankees, who I still don't understand why they thought he was so great. Lawrence Tanner was fantastic, but
Oh,
you
I love
don't
him.
always do it for that. If that happens, great. But I mean, listen to how you and I just love talking about this and the moments we have done in our careers.
Well, no, and it's just so cool. Like we said, we had some crossover. I started. I needed an internship in college, and I worked for the Orange County Flyers, the Fullerton Flyers, and you were the PA. That was fun, and it was nobody there. There was like 10 people in the stands, but we had a blast, and I got to run a scoreboard and like help out with other things. And you put a good word in for me for the Cal State Fullerton season and my senior year, and so I got to help in the press box with Mike Greenlee and Brad Hull, and I just fell in love with the whole being around press box guys, and we had a fun time, and I do miss it. And then when you got to be the Rancho guy, the PA guy, I actually was umpiring in that league at the time. So, we're kind of working together, but not really. And you were announcing my name all, with all this energy, which was great. But my favorite memory, Chris, is I think early on, I was working a game at Rancho and I had to play at the plate and, whack the guy out. And then it was actually for the Quakes at the time. So you put a little mustard on your announcement, and it was a fun memory for both of us.
Yep, I said meet at the dish, which I'll be honest, I got from Van Earl Wright, who used to do Headline Sports 30 years ago. But it's a great line, and that's one of the things where I push the envelope with the Quakes. If a guy gets a double, I'll say John Smith with a double or something exciting. And nobody really does that, and I just keep doing it. The original Quakes PA announcer, David Acord, did it, and I just keep doing it. A guy gets a triple, and I'll say he's safe or something like that. And of course, that's John Miller, but you can add to the fun and be part of it. And that I miss you being there, because you and I used to do stuff like that all the time, where you were professional, you were being an umpire, but that didn't mean we couldn't have a little fun together. Like when you would make a signal that here comes the pitcher, and I'd signal back, and you mentioned some names, Mike Greenlee, Brad Hull. You get to be doing it at the level. You make lifelong friends with these people, and it's good stuff. And there's nothing better. Hey, doing the Dodgers is great, but there was nothing more fun than the Flyers. I did the video board, the PA announcing. I was running the entertainment of the people running on, giving gift certificates, and I was doing the scoreboard, balls and strikes. I was doing it all except the official scorekeeping. It was exhausting, but there was nothing more fun because we were it. However you wanted the game entertainment to be, it was so much fun. And talk about a great fan experience. 500, 600 people there sometimes, 3,000 others. But Gary Carter was a manager, and Gary Templeton Jr. and Phil Nevin. I mean, and to have and of course we got to see Ricky
Henderson
and
Canseco.
Jose Canseco was there. So those are great memories. I mean, there's some times when you think, oh, I did Ladies League Baseball at Blair Field, and you're like, oh, what was I doing that for? But you never know what's going to happen, but that's how you work into it. I mean, but some of those things you just look back on it, it's like those are your dues that you pay.
That's right.
But it's been exciting. And who knows, it might have been something. And now you got women who are playing in minor league baseball. So
that's right. And you know what? We had just a good time. Just little things like Cal State Fullerton, we do like a potluck on Sundays where everyone would bring something. Or when you and Mike went up to Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, and we played wiffle ball in the parking lot for an hour after the game. I mean, we just
and on the field.
Yeah. We just had a good time, man. And just oh man, I look back and best of times indeed. You mentioned
the Flyers, if you remember, used to have a movie every Friday, a family baseball movie. And they would go on the field with their sleeping bags and watch the movie. I mean, that's the stuff. I love that, being a part of that. And that's going away. Well, the Quakes used to do that. They're doing less of it now because of COVID, obviously. So I worry about some of that stuff that makes it a unique experience, fan experience, going away.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you mentioned John Miller recently, in a few stories ago. And I want to ask you about some of your favorite broadcasters, from the past and even present. And I think there has been some changes, but that was something you wanted to do, was be a broadcaster. So who are some of the guys you've really admired over the years, and maybe some of the newer guys that you kind of like their style?
Yeah, and that's easy, because when I was a kid, those memories are accentuated by those great announcers. None greater than Kurt Gowdy. Who can see the Sea of Hands, Raiders, Dolphins 74 playoff catch without hearing Kirk out. He looking. Every great moment of the 60s and 70s, he was there. As a baseball fan, you're probably maybe too young, but there was Joe Garagio and Tony Kubek that were the baseball star announcers, and you would hear those games, and they made those moments come alive. Of course, Vin Scully, but I also loved Harry Carey. He was fun, and he was kind of what I'm about. So I can like a Harry Carey, and I can like a Vin Scully. And it's different. It's just like liking impressionist painter and then Jackson Pollock who splashes on the wall. Two different things, but they're both great in their own way. When I was a kid, there was Sean McDonough was great. There was a lot of great announcers, and I think people get spoiled now with the plan I still buy, the Major League Baseball extra innings, because I get to hear the great ones now, Kuiper and Kruko for San Francisco. Boston used to have a couple great guys. Now Don, forget his last name, is in San Diego now. But then there was Jerry Remy, who's since passed on. And of course, the Cubs had great announcers. And I like the Yankees with Michael Kay, and he's got David Cohn with him. And if you're a baseball fan and love announcers, it's a great time. There's a lot of good ones around. Who I don't like or I'm really tired of is I am burned out on Joe Buck and that whole Joe Buck style. I'm so tired of it. And Joe Davis with the Dodgers is okay, and I think he's trying to be a little more energetic at times, but I think everybody wants to be a Joe Buck wannabe because they go through broadcast school and they think this is the guy. But oh my God, if everybody sounds like him, tune it off. I want to hear somebody that's got some style and some fun. And of course, you know who I love in New York, John Sterling, the radio announcer with Yankees win, and
Yankees win.
The home run calls with it's a Judgian blast. I mean, sometimes a little corny, but you need some of that.
It's an A-bomb for A-Rod, right?
Yeah, exactly. I just can't. That's more my style. And Vin Scully is fantastic, but he had a unique ability to be professional but interesting. And a lot of guys that try and be Vin Scully, like Rick Monday, to me don't cut it. And I'm never going to be a play-by-play guy, so I don't have to worry about offending anybody. But there were some great announcers in the past that, in a way, nobody loves being in their late 50s, but I wouldn't trade. Dick Stockton was fantastic with Tommy Heinsohn doing NBA in the 80s. Look at the guy who just retired, Doc Everett, who did hockey.
NBC, yeah.
I mean, how do you not associate with those people? That's why I wanted to do that. They were part of the event.
Definitely. And back to John Miller, I used to love Sunday Night Baseball, and I'd have it on and I'd be in the other room, and I wanted as like an alert message on my phone. I just hear fastball, from John Miller, and just something so simple, but the way he said it, I was like, I love that sound. And he's a Giants guy, but hey, you can love the enemy, and just I respect talent wherever it's at. So he's one of my favorites. So I wish he was back on
awesome, and he's a great influence because he can, like you said, his inflection can do it without yelling. So many guys, all they can do to reflect excitement is to yell, and he can say he's safe, the way he does it. And he's not yelling necessarily, and he gets the point across. He adds a little spice without necessarily yelling. And over the years, I think I've become a little mellower, but tried to add a little more inflection to make it interesting without screaming. But yeah, there's so many good announcers out there, but unfortunately, sometimes you get burned out of hearing the same ones over and over.
I know. Well, now that Joe Buck's with the Monday Night Football, I'm sure they'll have, Joe Davis is going to do Fox and stuff. So they're kind of similar. You know who I used to really like? And he was on the call for the last Cal State Fullerton National Championship in 2004. Personally, I really liked Mike Patrick. I thought he had a certain, Mike Patrick?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that he had an energy about him.
I liked him, and he used to do ESPN football. He was great. And another one of my all-time favorites, surprised I forgot him, was Joe Buck's father, Jack Buck, who was fantastic, who's two of the greatest calls ever. One was Ozzie Smith, Cardinals win on a home run by the Wizard, and who forgets that? And the one play with the two greatest calls of all time, one by Vin Scully and one by Joe Buck, the Kirk Gibson home run. Vin Scully with the the famous call of his own, but Jack Buck with the I can't believe what I just saw. They were ranked, by the way, the 2 greatest calls in baseball history, and they were on the same play. One on TV.
Really?
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's awesome. The same play by 2 different broadcasters. That's awesome.
Yeah. And
in a year that has been
there's millions of them, but Chick Hearn and all those guys. Who could
Oh.
be a Laker fan without being loving Chick Hearn?
Oh, you got that right. No doubt about it, man. Oh, I love sometimes the sounds of the game is just, and with baseball more than any other sport, you can kind of just have it in your ear while you're doing kind of chores or something. I think it's a great like background sound. The other sports kind of require more attention, but there's just something different about baseball. Maybe that is just because I always say this, baseball is just different than everything else. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's what the heads of the game don't understand. Not every sport can be football or basketball. There's rhythms to baseball. And, the example I give is when they first did interleague play, I hated the idea and I still hate it because it takes away the specialness of the World Series. And I remember at the time, some young guys that I played softball with, they said, I think it's great, but these guys only watched 1 or 2 baseball games a year. 10 years later, I asked them, how many baseball games are they watching? 1 or 2 games a year. So as Whitey Herzog said, they gave away 100 years of tradition for a group of fans who are really not probably going to be regular fans. It's just how much can you change the game to appeal to these people without making the game not what it was? The clock for one. You can rush the game, but there are certain rhythms to baseball that don't exist in football and basketball. Part of it is the pitcher taking a second or the foul ball and you take a brief moment and, moments of that punctuated by great excitement. I understand they're worried about your future, but if you're not football, can you really try and manipulate it to try and be like football? And you just, at some point, all you're going to do is come up with a mess. And I think that's where baseball is kind of headed right now. The other thing that I think is fascinating to talk about is nobody can argue with the analytics and the results as far as season producing, but no question, it's made the game a lot less watchable. Nobody puts the ball in play. Sitting around waiting for a 3-run home run is really boring. Nobody goes for complete games. You don't track wins anymore. Who didn't love it when we were kids? Hey, if Ryan gets 1 more inning, he can get the win. If he gets another inning, he can get the shutout. And we paid attention to those numbers. So what do you do if you're baseball? Analytics works, but it's changing the game in very detrimental ways. And now they're talking about changing the fundamental rules of baseball, like large bases, to incentivize stealing. Now you're running in circles, and
well, that looks a little better. I think Annie Kinsella just turned the lights on, Chris. Yeah, you're getting a little dark there. Hey, we started playing when it was daylight out and the lights came on. It was time for us to go home, I guess. Like the good old days. I didn't mean to.
Like Wrigley Field, it took me a while to get around to
it. No worries, man. I try to explain this, to friends who, they're kind of baseball fans, but I'm like, now, baseball, actually, you mentioned some people will say baseball is hard to watch on TV. And I agree. It's much better being there that you mentioned it. But there's also an appreciation that baseball's there every day for you. When you come home from work, the Dodgers more than likely are playing. When what are we doing this weekend? Oh, the Cubs are definitely playing, So baseball's there for you. Unfortunately, your teams might lose. But you know what I'm trying to say? Like, baseball is a marathon and it's there every day for you for the most part from, in your case, February through the end of October.
And that's what makes it different than football. You can't have a sport that plays 162 games for 6 months that's on 5-6 days a week, your team, and try and make it as exciting as a game that played 3 hours once a week. It's not comparable. You can't make it like that. It's impossible. It's just the game's not designed to be like that. And if you keep messing with more playoff teams and interleague play, now they're changing it it's not balanced it's going to be balanced now, so you don't play more games against your division opponent. So now you're going to play the same teams the equal number of times as you guys in your division, so you don't even have a bias towards the division anymore, which means you could win the division and not beat anybody in your division. So they keep messing with the game to the point where it's like, leave my game alone. You can't make it like football. And I think it's an interesting time for fans. The analytics, the COVID, baseball trying to change Major League Baseball to save money. Well, is that what minor league baseball is about? How many people are not going to get to see minor league baseball in the next decade, the next generation, because Major League Baseball downsized the minor leagues? They forced franchises to close. There's going to be a lot of people who don't have access to a major league park who now can't go to a minor league park because there's no minor league team anymore. You think you're going to make that person a fan? Baseball can't compete with football on television. So if you don't get them that interaction with the game at the stadium, they're not going to be big fans. You got the wrong people in charge of baseball, and I really think they're going to pay the price in about a decade.
Wow, that is very interesting stuff. I've taken us a deep dive there. I agree with you. I mean, for those of you that don't watch minor league baseball, you don't go to game. First of all, it's fun. I mean, the ticket prices are cheaper, and hey, if you don't stay all game, fine, whatever. But you'll be home sooner, not less traffic. For the people that don't understand that to be around baseball that's affordable and to not have that, I didn't even think about that. So if you're in some small town, you obviously can't go to Petco Park in San Diego. But if you don't have any option, you don't have that team in I don't know, Visalia or whatever. Like, yeah, you'll just lose interest in baseball altogether.
Yeah, Pacific Northwest, the Carolinas, those towns don't have the ability to draw. The nearest baseball field is either Washington, D.C., which is several hundred miles north, or in Florida. So I just think baseball is a game where you fall in love with it. I don't think you fall in love with it on TV. I didn't. I fell in love with it because my dad took me to the vet when I was a kid and got me a hot dog and the free helmet you got on helmet day and the glove. And the vet was not a great experience, but that's where the love comes from. And, I think football knows itself better. And I just think that the people who are trying to market baseball as if it were football, you've got to know yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think hockey stumbles with that sometimes too, but I think they kind of have found their way to some extent. I just don't want them to take the romance out of the game for those of us who appreciate that. I just don't think you can reinvent the wheel without turning it into something that's not really baseball anymore. Yeah. And, I just think the money is tough. I'm a pro player, make as much money as you want, but boy, these players in all sports making so much now, it's hard to really relate to them. So minor league baseball is still that connection with these guys.
Oh yeah. And what do you make of this, Chris? Like I said, you're an all around sports guy. You just mentioned hockey. Why is it, do you think that hockey is not, I guess, more popular? It's not watched as much. The hockey fans I do know, they are diehards. They're some of the biggest fans out there. But why do you think hockey is definitely, fourth place or further down the totem pole as far as ranking of the big sports?
You got to go. It's not a TV sport. And even if you never played the game, that's a problem. If you grew up in a cold weather area and played the game like I did, there's a passion there that you're not going to get. But hey, they've had successful franchises in Sun Cities lately. Vegas is kicking booty. And they've had, good success with the Kings, obviously, for 50 years. So even areas where it's not sunny do okay, but you got to get them in the seats. It is a different, unique experience with an air where you can see the puck and see things off camera that you wouldn't see. It's different. And the energy of the fans. I was watching a playoff game before you and I got on the air here. It's just nothing like it. The fans go crazy. And it's great stuff. And that's why I love it. And I worry that some of the sports are changing. One thing I did want to talk about is the changing landscape of college baseball. When I started with Cal State Fullerton in 1996, yes, there were some big programs that have been there forever. Texas, Miami, and LSU. Some of them have disappeared, Wichita State. But boy, the last 10, 15 years, the Power 5 programs are making so much money. Schools are dumping money into sports that never used to be funded, like baseball. Washington State, dumping money into their baseball program because they got it from television. And you're seeing a divide between the haves and the have-nots that I think is really harmful to college baseball. Can Cal State Fullerton compete again? I don't know. If your son can go to Texas A&M and have these beautiful facilities and be on their own Texas A&M television network every night, how are you compete with the Cal State Fullerton? How did they compete 30 years ago? There were a lot of guys that got overlooked in the draft. There were hard, dirt scratchers, hard-nosed players and with a grudge. Well, there's few of those now. The players are different than they used to be. Talk to coaches. Players are not the same. They can't get yelled at. They can't motivate them like they used to. So that's harder to find those kind of players. And boy, how can Fullerton recruit? I just don't know if it's ever going to be the same. I mean, yeah, Augie Garrido was a genius and an all-time great. I think Horton, for all great as he was, is still underappreciated. But it's been a downhill slide slowly, even since Dave Serrano took over in like 2009. If you look, with slowly but surely, less appearances in the College World Series, and then we played Washington 4 years ago, and ever since then, it's just been the bottom's dropped out, and I'm just not sure it can ever be the same again.
No,
and so for Titan fans, I hate to say that, but look at UCLA. I mean, what Savage has been able to do well with that program. They don't dump as much money in that program as they should, but John Savage is an underappreciated star coach. And if he left, that program is going to be gone. USC has never recovered.
Yeah.
And they're a Power 5 school. So I don't know. I'm really concerned because once you stop being the little engine that could, go to Cal State Fullerton, they always get it done. Well, that's been a generation ago. And I worry that because of that, can you really get it done when you're not that program that could get it done anymore? I don't know.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about because back in the day, they were the team that had one set of uniforms and didn't even have locker rooms, and they went up against the USCs and all the Arizonas, the ASUs, the Stanfords, but now it seems like there's a lot of other teams out there that are kind of have that fighting spirit. Hey, why not us? What UC Irvine has done, what UC Santa Barbara has done, to me, they have really elevated their game. And just, for the resume, the past 10 years, I think Fullerton has definitely dropped off quite a bit. And some of the schools, they've not waited around to find out. And we saw in the lockout, Chris, there was a lot of with the work stoppage with Major League Baseball, there was a lot of people who started tuning into college baseball. It's on TV and ESPN Plus and everywhere now. And I see a lot of games out here still, but there's still 10,000 people in those seats in the SEC. And there's, maybe 1,000 at some of these other schools here.
Yeah. I mean, if our attendance is definitely not what it used to be. Now we're not the program we used to be, but there's still some programs that succeed in spite of that. Santa Barbara is a perfect example. I apologize, I can't remember the coach's name, but he's done a fantastic job. And all of a sudden, they're the star of the conference. But the conference overall ain't what it used to be. And I just wonder, can small conferences compete anymore? I mean, college football has a problem. Let's be honest. LSU, Alabama, Clemson, and maybe Ohio State every year. At some point, does that not get old? And for college baseball, people follow their team. Nobody goes, oh, well, Titans are out, so I'll watch LSU now. So if you don't have now, Coastal Carolina won a few years ago, and they're a small program, but if they don't have those little guys getting in there, I don't know. College baseball is in real trouble. And, the metal bats are a problem for some people. And they love it in those areas like LSU where there's no pro team within 5-hour drive. But out here, that's a different story.
No, it has changed drastically. Guys transfer and such now. You've been around a long time. And I mean, Chris, it's been since 2006 where Cal State Fullerton hasn't won a game in Omaha, let alone, they've got there plenty of times, but it's very different. And, we'll see what happens, but I agree with you. I do think things are kind of going in a different direction right now. And baseball's changing and baseball evolves, I guess. I don't like the people that are like, we got to bring in more younger people. It's like younger people are either going to like it or they're not. Don't try to, like you mentioned, too much change too fast is bad. You can't screw with the game, with your game, the game that we both love.
100%. And that's true of selling cars. You can't design a car saying, I want to appeal to this group of people. You got to make a good car and the people will come to it. Do you think football makes little modifications to itself, but it's so appealing to fans, they don't have to do much. But baseball, you got to be careful. You get to the point where you change the game so much, then you've alienated so many different groups. It's like, well, who's the core fan anymore? I mean, you just can't. It's like a politician that keeps changing their message all the time. At some point, nobody believes in them anymore.
That never happens. What are you talking about?
And that's what's going to happen in baseball. I mean, you've got to quit thinking that you're going to be football. You're not. The game just can't be that way in this modern society. It's not a rural based country anymore. But you can only do so much. And I'm really disappointed the way they're adding more and more playoff teams. It's getting to be with them now. The regular season doesn't mean much, and that has definitely not helped college basketball. And now they're going to do the same thing to college. And that's why college baseball is still great, because the regular season really does mean something. So Major League Baseball, you get to the point where you can just coast in and have not much incentive to win your division. That was a problem they thought they'd fixed. Now they're creating their own problem again. It's always chasing more money, and at some point it just gets frustrating.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Well, Chris, I definitely want to have you back on probably around playoff time, maybe when however many teams get in the, what is it, 20 teams now getting in the playoffs now? We'll have you on to
kind of hockey. Talk to me in the semifinals,
Yeah. When we get down to the final four, the two pennant series for sure.
I'll tell you one thing right now. If you're a Dodger fan, oh my goodness, I've heard a couple of really reputable reporters say this might be the most powerful baseball team we've seen in our lifetimes, and they are so well built. Really appreciate this team, because in this day and age, to put together a lineup like this, pitching, and most of it is homegrown. It's not just all free agents. This team is really, I'm a kind of a Yankee guy and Angels too, but boy, what the Dodgers have done with a likable group. Angels are really likable too. They're a pleasant surprise, but I think the Angels and Dodgers folks, tune in. They're two good watches right now.
I really want to see a Dodgers Angels World Series sometime in my life, and a Dodgers Yankees World Series sometime in my life. I think if it was Dodgers Angels, that would be awesome, just to be the ultimate freeway World Series. That would be so
pleasant surprise. Taylor Ward has been really good. Jared Walsh, Brandon Marsh, as well as Ohtani, and I'm really pleasantly surprised. Go see some Angel games. They're fun to watch, and boy, I appreciate the Dodgers right now. They are a powerhouse.
Yeah. And guys, if you get out to a Rancho Cucamonga Quakes game, don't interrupt him while he's talking, but go on up to the press box, give him a wave, say, I heard you on the Get Home Safe podcast, Mr. Alba. I guarantee you he will shake your hand and say hello.
You give me a Get Home Safe podcast props. I'm going to see if I pull out a Rancho Cucamonga Quakes softy ball from somewhere, a little souvenir for you.
All the swag you have. Come on, you got all kinds of shirts and stuff. And
I'm not giving up my swag.
You got your Real Hondo Prep hat somewhere, right? Your RHP lid.
Todd Carson, sweet stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gordon from back in the day, Gordon Mark, as we know him. Good
Congratulations
times
to him and to Todd on his opportunities. If they're watching, miss seeing you guys, and good luck to you both.
Oh yeah, they're doing great things in the coaching ranks, and they're big fans of you, Chris. They're very big fans of the one and only Chris Albaugh. Anyway,
I'm a big fan of the podcast, so keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. Hey, you're the man. You give me the big intro music here. Well, I may have another podcast coming up for Real Hondo Prep Football in the fall where I may need to use your voice again. So I'll be in touch, my friend.
All right, get home safe. I'm out.
I need get home safe. Chris, it's been fun, man. Thanks so much.
Right. See you, Matt.
Well, always a pleasure to chat with my good friend, Dr. Chris Albaugh, for the Rancho Cucamonga Quakes and Cal State Fullerton Baseball. It's been a long time since we have chatted, and I honestly could talk baseball and sports and broadcasting, just life really, with Chris for hours. So I want to have him back on sooner rather than later. Although you guys get to hear him every episode here, as he is the narrator for the intro song of every single podcast we have, and we will have him do another intro for us when I do the Real Hondo Prep Football podcast this upcoming fall. So Chris and I will be in touch, and I'm going to have him back on to talk baseball playoffs and other things, I think, really, really soon. So one of my favorite guys in all of sports and all of my travels and connections. Just always fun time hanging out with Chris Albaugh. So thanks again, Chris. Let's do it again very, very soon. Guys, that will wrap up today's episode of the Get Home Safe podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to Tune in next week on Tuesday and Friday, of course, as you know the schedule by now. Tuesday, just me rambling away and giving my opinions on sports and current events and things. And then Friday, much like you heard today, a guest, a long-form conversation with a friend, just talking about anything really, maybe their journey and just their opinions on some of the things going on in the world of sports. So baseball season is rolling right along. We've got the college baseball playoffs right around the corner. And then it's on to the dog days of summer, right? And enjoying summer and getting out to some ball games and eating hot dogs. And it's nice to have those options available to us here. So I'm very excited for the summer coming up, and I'm ready to go watch some more baseball and chat more baseball after talking with Chris. So guys, get out to some ball games. Baseball, you got to get to games, as Chris mentioned, whether it's high school, college, minor leagues. It's important to get out to games and enjoy it in person. So now that we can, we should. And I think it's beneficial to all of us, and we can all learn to love the great game of baseball a little bit more. That's enough for me, guys. Thank you again, Chris Albaugh. Guys, I will be back on Tuesday recapping the weekend of sports and other things going on. But until then, guys, as always, no matter what you're doing, whether you're out on the town or rounding third base, get home safe.